Well, of all other things, I decided to come on here and do one more video at least with the grandfather frosts, and where I've already finished carving them already, as you've probably seen in a previous video. Decided this time I'd come around and start sanding on them and talk to you a little bit while I do that. I've kind of got semi-rough grit here of piece of worn out sandpaper, and sometimes I try to use those as best I can because they might be able to kind of help it happen where enough of the facets can stay in the wood. I've kind of got a little place here around the hem of the skirt of the coat where I'm kind of making little things here where it's just rounding things off, and like I've learned in little books about some of these Santas, you know, that it's always good to try to let the facets show in the wood and kind of make it so it's going to be where it all just looks the way it's going to look once you get done and get down to it. And see, as far as we know, we've kind of got the Santa to come the way it's going to go, and then of all things, try to make it so we get around the hat here, and then it's all going to be little things that make it all so good and worth the time and effort it takes. And see, that's how we got along on this. I decided to get more than one grit of sandpaper here so we could work these along a little better. And you'd probably also have noticed there's little details about this where didn't put any hair or anything in it, just kind of worked around the coat and have the hat coming out of the coat, and to make it so it's all gonna be a good little bit of piece of work here. And so I'm coming along on this other one too, trying to make it so it's going to work its way down to us and make us all happy people, and make it so we see a little brighter world in us. And when it comes down to how he's going to look, there's going to be little extra work come along to this. One thing I'll make mention of is how that I sort of like on one of these pieces of wood, I did something where on one end of the turning blank, when it originally came, I wrote Sapelle on there so that I would remember what kind of wood it was, not to get it confused with mahogany or African mahogany or any of that other stuff it looks almost like or carves almost like. So you see there's that little place down there where I got the word Sapelle on there. We'll have to try to sand that off a little bit so that I can have it not show when it comes down to the original work, though there's a little bit of extra work I'm gonna put along in him as well, because that's going to be the place where, of course, I'm going to burn it in or write it in again so that people will know what he's made out of. But the word got slightly cut off here whenever I was carving it, so that's where we need to get rid of this little place made here by the permanent marker, and the time when the work is going to be done, it's all going to make sense to us when we get it all worked out in the end. And so, of all things, Sapelle and work. And this one, I'd say it kind of has some saw marks down in here, so be a good idea if we can to kind of try to get rid of these curves that are down in this one. And even for this, I'd say it could be that maybe an electric or power sander might do us a little better and make it so we see old Santa Grandfather Frost come down to the things we want him or need him to be, and then finally just make a little work come into him, make it so he's going to have a little light come into him to make it so we get rid of all these extra lines and crevices that show up in the wood. And of all things, I see bless old Grandfather Frost, the Russian Santa, and all the legends that come about with him. I always like to tell the story about old Saint Nick and old Shim, the story where there was the man who had the daughters. He couldn't afford their dowries and could have almost sold them as slaves, but he didn't want to do that, and so it just so happened that the way Father Nicholas worked that out for him was he made these dowry bags, and he snuck into the window and put dowry bags into each of the robes of each of those daughters, and then the next day they woke up and found the dowry bags, and so the father of the girls was all happy. He wouldn't have to sell them as slaves. They were happy too, and so it was all just the way that in that society, you know, that was how it was. Men had to have dowries to give their daughters away as brides, and so it's all just making itself work to the better, as we say. And as for now, come down to where we get this final thin grit on the wood and make it so Grandfather Frost is going to come out a little more smooth in the end. And then everybody loves a Santa that can be kind of unique. And so sometimes, like what I was taught by Calvin Grant, was that if you carve a little more slowly, it'll turn out so good that you won't have to sand it. I think it's one of those things where I've not been able to do all that well, and always been impulsive and high-strung, and always been happy to try to get it all done faster, and sometimes that's why I end up sanding afterwards. Because as for a little carving work now, that's how we come along on this. There's little things in life that we learn by what we do, little things in life that we learn by how we care, and all the things in life that this little piece of work is going to do for us. It's going to make us so we're going to see another little light come our way and brighten our days. Our forest grows and grows and grows, and it's all just going to be a happy little way to go. As you see, we got him all done out here, made him so he's going to be a little work in the end, and got one little piece of wood on its face above its mustache. We got to get rid of it all and make it so we're going to get it all done in the end. Make it so he's going to have a little light in him and brighten up the forest of the days, I say. And in this little work, it's going to be all done just like this. Just have yet to decide on a few things. That would be, of all things, whether or not to consider even putting a little cross on the hat or something like that, because this is going to be some work that's going to need its own doing in its own time. And so I just want to say that this is the video where come on here just to say a little more, do a little more. It's Friday morning here where I am, and I've kind of got a day to work tomorrow, and then I tell you, I've got a weekend. I've got a show this weekend out in Danville at the Danville Christian Academy. So the school's gonna be a good place to do a show. I look forward to the sales I can make. Don't know what kind of sales I will make, but just look forward to waiting and seeing how it's going to go, what it's going to turn out like. Probably have a few things that might need to be done away with, but we're just going to wait and see how it all turns out. If there's any parents with any kids there that buy anything for the kids, like there was at the show in Lancaster I went to, that'll be great. And so, as for a little work, the time shall come, I shall have more to let you see. I'd say we've pretty much gotten done with the guy, and there's probably going to be a few things we might do in a little separation from the video, but even though the hat might come out a little crooked in ways, we're going to take care of that the best we can and the best way we can, because it's not going to be the best it's ever going to be. So I'd say I just appreciate you all coming on here to watch what I do. Might show you a couple more blanks while I'm at it. And took some tamarind, with which I made a couple more blanks for a Great Dane, like I've carved out of Kentucky Coffee Tree before, and a couple more blanks for a Bull Terrier, which I've carved out of Tuplio before. And we know that all the little blanks we have for all the things, there's a little more to share about how I got inspired to carve dogs. And though I'd say there was an event that I carved the dogs for, it wasn't an event where I sold a whole lot, but I learned by making the dogs and by putting them out in places that it was certainly a good way to get a whole lot more sold and find out the dogs were something people liked and something they'd purchase. I plan to make a few more patterns for a German Shepherd, for an English Bulldog, and a French Bulldog, and because those are just some ones I've had by request. I've made a new addition to a Dachshund pattern because first one didn't turn out so well. It didn't turn out long enough to work, but there's going to be times I'm going to do a little extra work into my stuff and put a little more out there, make it so we have more to be seen. And so, as for now, I want to thank you all for watching, and I hope to see you in the next video. Goodbye.